Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me. I'm Allison. It's Where I'm From 84 today with Heidi. And I'm reading Red Comet, the biography of Sylvia Plath by Heather Clark. And it's like 1,000 pages. I think I'm going to be reading it. I feel like I'm kind of going to be reading it for a very long time. And I've actually favorite thing, but it's just so dense and long. I don't know that I'm going to get through it otherwise. It is really fascinating, and a lot of people suggested it to me. Hi, Heidi. How
Hello,
are you?
I'm doing well. How are you today?
I'm good. It's
It
Monday. I'm here.
is. It's almost snowing out my window,
Oh,
so
you all have had quite a roller
I
coaster of weather.
we have. It was 85 when I
Yeah.
left on a plane from Minnesota to go to Boston last weekend, and it was
hmm
snowing when I got back. So
Yeah. I went to college in Chicago, and when my last year of college, it was like that, and I needed to leave. I
I
just
do
like
like winter, but it's been a long one.
It's so long. I just remember on Memorial Day weekend, it was still kind of rainy and cold. And I was just like, oh God,
hmm
I don't know. I can't take this any. And our graduation was in June, mid-June. And it felt like, oh, this is why they do the quarter system here. Because it's not necessarily summer in May.
No, not at all.
Yeah. So it's a long haul. And
Yeah.
you've had a particularly long winter with,
Yes.
you've had a lot of snow.
hmm Yes, it's been, I think, like the third snowiest winter on record or something like
Right.
that.
We've had a lot of rain here in California,
hmm
but you have had a lot of snow. And I am in contact. I do a workshop with some people from University of Minnesota, and so they
hmm
were all talking about all the trees they lost because of the
Yeah.
snow, which
Yeah,
is
they
sad.
just flop over
Yeah,
because they were
they
so
can't take
weighed
it.
down. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. They're like, I'm done now.
yeah.
Because you've
Everybody's
asked
ready
too
for some
much.
relief.
Yeah, yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
So there's your weather update, everyone.
hmm
It's I mean, it's interesting. It's a fascinating weather time
hmm
in this world we live in.
It is.
So is there anything you'd like to share or what you're reading or anything at all, Heidi, before you begin your
Mm.
poem?
Well, what I'm reading is I just started Maggie Smith's new book,
Oh, me too. It's so good.
so I'm enjoying digging into
Yes,
that.
was not talking about it. That'll be my next live. I was talking about Sylvia Plath's biography that I'm
Okay. Oh wow.
really working on. But I am also reading You Could Make This Place
Yeah.
Beautiful. And it is just, as a Midwesterner, do you feel a certain affinity with it? Like that she's talking about things that not necessarily everyone talks about?
Yeah. It's a very relatable
hmm
read so far. So absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw Megan Steelstra, who's also she's a Chicago-based writer, but her saying, "I see you, Ohio."
Yeah.
Like that. There's not really as much representation about.
hmm
There's a lot about the coasts
hmm
in literature, and there's not as much about the Midwest. And
hmm
I just thought that was interesting, seeing it through that
Yeah.
lens.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I definitely write a lot about the Midwest, so
Yes,
we'll be talking about that, I'm sure,
yeah,
too.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, so you want me to launch into the poem? Is that where
It's
we're at?
really up to you, but
Okay.
yes,
Okay.
anytime.
Yeah, so I'm going to read my poem, and it's from my latest book. And I remember seeing, your series and thinking, oh, I'm done. I
hmm
have one already.
hmm
So that was fun. And it sets the stage for the chapter about origin.
hmm
So here we are. Where I come from. I come from green grass and big blue stem, mountain streams and old log cabins, winding rivers and geese that fly south, returning again year after year. I come from creatures who breathe, swim and dance, sleep and howl, in the company of old red pines, oak savannas, and rocky ledges. I come from anxiety and peace, turbulent cascades and smooth waters, gusty winds and the eye of the storm. I come from all that is myth and magic, wild and wandering, rooted and real. I come from destruction and healing, across vast waters and beyond open plains. I come from quiet walks hand in hand, Solitude and communion, praise and lamentation. I come from joy, from sorrow, from recognition. There's so much I don't know.
Beautiful. Such a meditative poem about a lot about nature.
It is. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think when I think about where I come from, I think about the earth first.
Hmm.
So I
And are you
definitely,
born and raised in Minnesota?
and so if I want to, so I came from South Dakota,
Okay.
eastern side of the state, and then I have moved about a 5 hour drive into Minnesota from where my parents still live.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's a very, uh, I've been to Minnesota, so a
Mm-hmm.
few times. I mean, it's a strong landscape. Like I think it makes strong people.
Yeah, and it's such an interesting state because there's all these different it's a lot of difference, there's different ecosystems. You have the
Hmm.
prairie, you have the big woods, and you have the pine forests and the river valleys and all the lakes. So it's got a lot of diversity when it comes to different landscape.
Yeah. And so you wrote this as part of your book, and it's
Hmm.
a collection of poems. Is
It's
it a collection?
actually not
Oh,
a
okay.
poetry book. It's this one.
Okay. So is it sort of like you can make this place beautiful? Like, does it have
No,
echoes of that
it
feeling?
it does. I talk a lot about, kind of mining for beauty
Hmm.
and figuring out how to let hard things sit right next to the little glimmers. But at its heart, it's a book about how connecting with nature can bring you nourishment, reflection, be transformative, that kind of thing. And it's really rooted in my exploration of where I came from, South Dakota, growing up on the prairie,
Hmm.
and it branches out in all kinds of different directions. But we start in origin, and then we move through the section of journey, kind of all the different ways you can go in your life, and then it's a gathering up of all the things you've taken from your journeys and integrating them into the section about returning, and then using that to add what you can to the healing of the world.
Hmm.
So that's my elevator speech.
It's good. That's always hard. I find it
It
hard
is.
um, to try to synthesize all the different ideas that are present in a book into
Mm-hmm.
one or two
Yes.
sentences.
Right.
Um, it's not easy. And so you have been kind of in the same place. I mean, 5 hours is a bit of a different, but one of the things I'm not meaning purposely to keep talking about, you can make this place beautiful, but
Yeah.
I do really appreciate, and I have friends who are big fans of Wendell Berry and sort of
Mm-hmm.
this idea of like kind of growing where you were planted and or being a part of a community and staying invested in that community, which is a
Right.
choice I've made the past 20 years. I'm
Mm-hmm.
really kind of in the same place. And I feel like there's more conversations about that than there used to be, or maybe I'm just more aware of it.
Yeah, I don't know if there's more conversation or just more people realizing that, okay, what I need, maybe it's right here.
Hmm.
So often we're reaching, trying,
Hmm.
find all the things that are going to make something better.
Hmm.
And I've found it really helpful just to say, okay, this is where I am. This is where I'm from or close to it.
Hmm.
And how can I make this beautiful, to go back to
Yeah.
that way of thinking. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And this kind of, I don't know, that somehow I think creating community, which for me is
Mm-hmm.
not my uh, family of origin. Like that is not the community that I have here. It's
Mm-hmm.
other people that I've met and created friendships and community with. And
Mm-hmm.
that if we are more invested and rooted in our community, then maybe we are working toward healing it and sort
Right.
of undoing some of the damage that's been done by
Mm-hmm.
colonists.
Yeah, absolutely.
That idea.
Mm-hmm.
And that when we're kind of popping from place to place, we're less likely to feel that
Right.
responsibility.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's so important just to develop those close ties, even with people who don't necessarily share your values. The
Right.
people who are right here,
Hmm.
listening to their stories, sharing yours. That's what weaves a community together, even if you don't all agree,
Yeah.
because you never do. You know.
No, for
So,
sure.
yeah.
And it's gotten so, uh, it's gotten difficult, I think, with certain
Mm-hmm.
issues to
Oh yeah.
connect with people.
Mm-hmm. Certainly. definitely has. It's not an easy road, but worth continuing to walk on it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's been a real change because I moved a bit, not a ton as a kid, but I did move. And I just kind of thought, oh, I'll continue to live different places and have different experiences. And then
Mm-hmm.
um, there is, for me, there has been a value in staying.
Yeah, I can, I'm thinking back to when I was, say, in high school or whatever, growing up in South Dakota, and all I wanted to,
Was like,
it sounds, all I wanted to do was leave. I
yeah.
wanted to see other places, the cliche flyover country, that's where I was living, right? And
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing interesting here. To my teenage mind, that's what I
Mm-hmm.
was thinking. And so I did go other places. I spent some time in Malta, and I worked at a bunch of different camps across the country, and then I ended up back. I went to college in Iowa, in Decorah. Um, and then rather than looking for a job somewhere far away, I thought, oh, this is okay.
Mm-hmm.
I feel good back in this, in the flyover country, in the middle ground of
Mm-hmm.
this country that I live in. So I kind of went out and then I came back again and started setting those roots down or recultivating them, I suppose.
Well, and I think also Robin Wall Kimmerer talks about it in Braiding Sweetgrass, and it was one of the first times that I'd had it framed this way, this idea that the natural world that we are raised with, the plants, and like you write about in your poem, and
Mm-hmm.
the mountains or the valleys or that they are also our community, and that
Mm-hmm.
we
Yeah.
feel this kinship. And she talks a lot about living in a different natural world and how
Mm-hmm.
that is as much a shift as getting used to new neighbors as getting used to new trees
Mm-hmm.
um, and I it was just such a eye-opening thing. I mean, the whole book is brilliant, but
Yeah.
that idea, and then I was talking about it with some friends, and one of them, I live in Southern California, was talking about how when she moved here, she just, nothing was pretty.
Mm-hmm.
Like she was just like, what is
Mm-hmm.
this place? You know?
Yeah.
Ugh. Because she was so used to the East Coast and big trees and all this sort of like more like showy nature,
Mm-hmm.
and she's just like,
Right.
oh, it's just like some weeds. And but for me it is very it's home to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
um
Yeah.
and so I just thinking about home is not only the people or the structure, it's also the
Mm-hmm.
natural world.
Yeah, absolutely. I write, especially in this new book, a lot about, my community and the trees and the
Mhm.
animals. And there's a section because I wrote the book, during the
Yeah.
pandemic. That's when the bulk of the writing was happening.
Mhm.
And I wrote about how even though we couldn't gather, like we wanted to
Mhm.
during those months and years, I found a kind of a deep solace in looking for community in my non-human
Yeah.
neighbors, and
Mhm.
just paying attention more closely to the beavers in the lake or the squirrels or the chipmunk out back, and remembering that, okay, I'm being held by this community even though we
Mhm.
aren't, it doesn't look like I want it to right now.
Right.
And that was really helpful for me to kind of navigate that time.
It's always very helpful for me
Yeah.
whenever I'm feeling, but specifically then. And I think also
Mm-hmm.
there was this feeling of like, well, the natural world is just like continuing on. It's just
Mm-hmm.
moving forward as it does. It's not
Right.
alarmed or
Mm-hmm.
terrified. It's
Right.
just doing what it does.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
whenever I'm overwhelmed, the natural world is such a gift. And I know that that is my privilege, that I'm able to connect with the natural world in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I am very grateful that I've had those opportunities throughout my life.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I think it's essential for everyone to have
Mm-hmm.
that opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
But it's like, it is, I really, when I went through sort of this big shift in my life when I was 17 and sort of my whole like life fell apart,
Mm-hmm.
that is when I really discovered. Up to that point, I always found solace in nature, but I didn't identify it. I would just go swim in the ocean or stare at the water or, feel
Right.
like, thank God that exists. I'll be okay. Um, but that was when I started to name like, oh, I'm going to go do this thing. Like
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have the word self-care or any of that, but like,
Right.
oh, I'm going to go take a hike and
Mm-hmm.
just let it all go.
Yeah. Yeah, my husband will say, if I'm cross or whatever, not in a good mood, he's like, have you been outside yet today? Maybe you should consider stepping out for a minute. And it does. It always helps. It doesn't change what's wrong, but it helps me respond to things differently.
That's such a good point because I think about that with kids and myself. Like, have you eaten? Have you had water? Have you had rest?
Mm-hmm.
But stepping outside, even if it's just, looking at the bees flying around or
Mm-hmm.
a shrub, it doesn't need to be some epic vista.
Exactly.
I think
Yeah.
we sort of sometimes have that impression, like it needs to be Instagrammable,
Right.
this moment.
Yeah.
But
And
it
those
doesn't.
moments of stepping out, they're often more useful if you do not take your device. You step out and you just allow yourself to be there without having to document it or prove that you were there or
Mm-hmm.
show somebody else. Just give yourself that gift of direct connection. Nothing else is necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just joking around that with my husband about that last night. Like, did this really happen? This like beautiful moment we just had. Did it? Because we're not posting it anywhere.
Right.
So it did.
Right. It did,
It
absolutely
did
did.
really
You were
happen.
more in it because you didn't take a picture.
I do purposely put my phone in the kitchen a lot, just like
Yeah.
away. Because I
Mm-hmm.
know that I engage with my phone. So I know that I need to like put it in another
Right.
space.
Yeah. So I co-wrote another book a couple of years ago called 12 Tiny Things. And we talked about, those little things that you can do to, help yourself navigate the days more effectively and be more present. And putting the phone in a separate room was one of those things. Also, stepping outside and looking all the way up,
Yes.
tiny thing that anybody can do. Pretty much.
What are some of the other ones? Well, I don't want you to like spoil
Yeah.
the whole book in
Yeah,
case
no, it's
people are
fine.
going to buy it. But
We offer lots of different suggestions and ask lots of questions to help you identify your own things that you want to try.
right.
But it's things like identifying what you really want to drink first thing in the morning. Thinking about it first rather than just grabbing the coffee.
I only drink water. I am like the most basic person
Yeah.
in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And neither my husband or I drink coffee. And people are just like flabbergasted by
Yeah.
this.
No, that's
I
great.
can't.
If you like coffee, great. If you don't, that's fine.
Yeah. So that one, thinking about what I'm going to drink is just water.
No.
But I think for a lot of people, for me, that would be, when are you going to look at your phone? Because I probably look at it too soon. Because I feel like I want to just like get it.
Yep.
Like I just want
So
to know what I'm up against.
Yeah, one of the tiny things that we offer, and it's actually in the nature chapter, is to give yourself at least 5 minutes of analog time when you wake up. And another tiny thing that ties to that is don't keep your phone as your alarm clock. Get
I
an
do
old
not do
school
that.
alarm clock.
I totally have an old school alarm clock. But then
Yeah.
I get out of bed, I turn on my phone.
Right.
So I think it's more of a window would be good. Like to just like breathe in, which I think is kind of what you're saying about choosing your drink or thinking about what you want to drink, like sort of just inhabiting like where you are this morning.
Yeah.
Instead of just kind
you're
of
gonna
like
take 3 deep breaths instead of taking your phone, or
Yeah.
maybe you're gonna step outside for 5
Yeah.
minutes or 30 seconds even.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it's going to take to make you feel rooted first and then do the digital thing.
And I think that do you find that, does writing help you feel that rootedness?
Yeah, it does. I'm one of those writers who writing helps me figure out what I think about things and just process, as many find that to be helpful. But it definitely helps kind of ground me and reminds me of, okay. And sometimes even, writing with a pen, making
I
a
love that.
step away from the computer and
Yeah.
scribble in the journal for a while instead of typing.
Yeah, and there's something really for me and it's interesting because I've talked to one of my good friends who's an artist and the different tools she'll use, because obviously a lot of art has gone digital, but that she for different ideas might use brushes or pens or pencils, and like that it does tap into a different part of our consciousness.
Yeah, definitely. And I noticed the other day, I got out my daughter, who is 11, sometimes she likes to go outside and we have our nature poem writing sessions.
Oh,
It's so
I
awesome.
love
We
that.
just go out and we take our little notebooks and we kind of sit still and listen to
Mhm.
things and write stuff down. So we were doing that, and I was realizing that I was like thinking faster than I could write. So I just had to say, okay, just write one word at a time, because
Mhm.
you're trying to hurry so often. Even when I'm sitting outside, just listening to nature, I was still trying to hurry
Mhm.
through it.
Mhm.
And that was really a kind of self check. I thought, okay, just one word at a time. Don't have to write fast. Just
Yeah, like where are we all racing to? I mean,
it was an interesting realization the other day, because sometimes as a poet and a person who's really nature connected,
mhm.
sometimes I'm like, I got this, I'm good, I know what I'm doing, but I still have to check myself every day and make myself slow down and pause.
Yeah, pausing is so important.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to know more about your nature writing. Do you just go and because I also have an 11-year-old, and so I'm going to try to pitch this to
Yeah,
him.
yeah.
So you just go with your paper and your pen, or do you have like a guide, or do you just like go out and just what
It's
you observe?
I think the first time we did it, we just kind of went in the front yard and there was a stump. And we just kind of sat down and paid attention for a while. I think I maybe at the first time had her kind of tell me what she was noticing, or I suggested gently that she
Hmm.
write down, okay, what do you hear, or smell, see,
Hmm.
what details do you
Hmm.
notice, and then she kind of took it from there. And sometimes she'll draw instead of write,
Hmm.
kind of
Yeah.
whatever we feel like.
Oh, I just love that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I love doing things together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's extra nice when I'm like, I don't feel like doing this right now. But she gets me out there
Oh.
and, say, okay, mom, it's time to do our nature's writing session. Like, okay, I can do this. I can take a pause and go outside with
Hmm.
you. So it's good to have that extra encouragement from the young people.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also like gets me right in the heart when something that we have shared with them becomes meaningful to them,
Yeah,
separate from
oh,
the prompt.
absolutely. I don't have to ask all the
Hmm.
time. Sometimes they
Hmm.
ask us.
Hmm.
So that's
Yeah,
special. Mm-hmm.
when they have ownership.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, this has been like a very calming chat. This is like really what needed this Monday morning. I'm gonna have to check out your books. 12 Small Things.
Yeah.
I
12
love
times.
small things.
Yeah. It,
Everybody, we can't do, we're just, we can't, you got to start small and then it turns into something big.
absolutely. You gotta start somewhere. And as a health coach, I talk about that all day, every day. Just do what you
Hmm.
can right here, and then you can build
Hmm.
from there. Mm-hmm.
Hmm. So, any other closing thoughts or your reflections on this poem or anything else before we
Yeah,
wrap?
well, it was really nice to kind of circle back to that. I'm at the very end of my kind of book tour
Hmm.
because it came out at the end of January, so I just finished, had a
And
book signing
congratulations.
last night, and I'm kind of done for a little bit. So it was fun to come back to that because I read it at the book launch, that poem.
Mm.
So it was fun to read that at kind of the close of
Oh, good.
the,
So it's
yeah,
like synergy.
circle.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
I
it's
think,
always rooting to kind of think about, okay, where do I come from? Remind yourself, okay, this is who I am. Mm-hmm.
yeah. I, this whole process of listening to these poems every week, sometimes twice a week, has been,
Mm-hmm.
it really has had an impact on
Yeah,
me.
yeah. What a great project you started. All the stories that are
Oh, I love
coming
stories.
together, kind of, adding to that web.
Hmm.
So thank you
And
for
I've
having
always
me.
loved listening to stories, and this gives me an excuse to listen to hit up people I don't
Yeah,
know.
sure.
Which is like, oh, I have an
Yeah,
excuse to do this. Great.
yeah.
Well, thank you for joining me, Heidi, and all the best with your book and congratulations. And I'm glad you had an opportunity to reflect on your your accomplishment.
Yeah.
I have a hard time doing that sometimes. So I think it's nice to
Mm-hmm.
have a space to just sit with
Mm-hmm.
what we've accomplished. And you wrote a book,
Yeah.
more than
Yeah.
one, but you wrote this book, and that's an
Good.
accomplishment. And
Yeah. Thank you.
congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay,
All right.
have a
Thanks for
lovely day.
having me. You too. Have a great
Bye.
party. Bye.